Okay. Okay. Now, this is a great pleasure for me to introduce Hchioh-Sang today because Seung and I have first met in 1979 when we were working in the same office in Seoul, in Korea. And it is actually the first, the day I am meeting him today is the first we see each other again after 17 years. So my introduction is going to be very out of date, and Seung Hyo-song will actually give the up-to-date picture. The office where we met was called the Space Group of Korea, which had a considerable influence in the country insofar as its then director, who has now died, a man called Kim Swoo-gun, imported modern architecture in Korea almost single-handed, and we are now talking about the 1950s, 1960s. Now, the Space Group of Korea was not only an architect's office. It had a department of industrial design, and it had also a magazine called Space, which is still up and going, and which was then the only architecture magazine and also the first, I believe. I mean, in those days, architecture and engineering hadn't as yet been differentiated. It had theater, which promoted traditional Korean arts. All this was inside the architect's office. That was also the first of its kind, and at a time where modernity was just on the way. That was not so long after the Korean War. And the office also had an exhibition space, which was promoting in the same way Korean traditional art and trying to provide a balance between modernity on the one hand and tradition on the other, which I believe is still one of the major issues in Korea. And to sum it up, the Space Group of Korea was no doubt the most important cultural institution in the country, and in every sense, and with very strong link with the Ministry of Culture then. Now, Seung-sang, whom we are going to hear tonight, was a protege of Kim Swoo-gun, and we actually worked on one scheme together, which we were recalling tonight, which was a great pleasure. But when I really came to know Seung-sang was not during the day, but at night, because Korea has had at the time curfew from 12 to 4 in the morning, and so we spent many nights together, mostly first at the grocery shop around the corner, and then in a nightclub where we were spending the time between 12 and 4, and finally at 5 o'clock in the morning we were going to have breakfast, and then spending 2 or 3 hours in the office to sleep before we started working again, and working indeed extremely hard at between 8 and 9. Now, this gives you an idea that Korea then was extremely tough, and it is still so today, I am sure. Now, Seung-sang now runs one of the most promising practice in the country, and he also runs a small architecture schools together with a group of architects of the same generation, and they have a pivotal role through that organization in actually establishing links between Korea and the West, and bearing in mind that Korea is extremely focused on the West as well as on the future of their own country. This is a very important role indeed, architecture-wise. I know as yet relatively little about the recent work since we haven't met for 17 years. And that's why I very much look forward to this lecture tonight, given by an old friend. Right.
Thank you very much, Irene, for the wonderful introducing. Please slide on and write up, please. One and a half years ago, on October 21st, 1994, Seung's Grand Bridge, a vital bridge that crosses Han River of Seoul, suddenly collapsed. A disaster that happened at the morning rush hour brought 42 deaths, including 12 young schoolgirls. We Koreans were astonished at this appalling incident, and the astonishment was greater than ever, for we realized that this kind of disaster could happen anywhere around us at any time. This bridge was built in 1970s when economic development stormed us, and everyone was proud that the construction time had been reduced to minimum. I realized that this was not simply a collapse caused by feeble construction or lack of technology. It symbolically represented the collapse of logic that sustained Korean society for the past several decades, that single-mindedly pursued economic growth. After 8 months, in June of 1995, another event that humiliated our nation happened. Fall of Sampung Shopping Center. Sampung Shopping Center was situated in the southern part of Han River, a newly developed area and also where rich people lived. This building was filled with lavish and extravagant goods which ordinary people could not reach. But due to so-called age general weakness, this gigantic shopping center, 6 floors high and 4 floors deep, collapsed within seconds, resulting deaths of over than 600 people. It was built only 6 years ago. We were stupefied at this grievous accident and wondered where we are now on and where we are headed to. "600 years of Seoul's history began with the foundation of Joseon Dynasty. These are maps of Seoul made in 18th century showing the beautiful natural surroundings. Natural surroundings of Seoul with handsome mountains, sunny fields and rivers crossing these, and all these harmonious with 4 seasons, were as beautiful as any other capital or metropolis of the world. Also was the scene of urban environment and architecture, something to be proud of with the dignity which our people have cultivated up to the standards of our living. But landscape of Seoul on the verge of 21st century seems unlikely that it had a history of 600 years. Even traces of it is rare to find. We seem to live in a makeshift society. Japanese colonial occupation and the tragic Korean War practically devastated the foundation of our society and culture. And onto that, we single-mindedly pursued only wealth without knowing why, while the dictators led this country with a succession of corrupt political systems. As a result, we are in a deformed state. Traces of culture and history has been demolished for economic growth, nature destroyed. Now we are thoroughly violating it by careless buildings that looks ridiculous with fresh colors. All along life is ignored. Still, desires of overnight millionaires are increasing more than ever. Sometimes I feel I am living in the city of desire. Two figures stand tall in the history of Korean modern architecture, Kim Jung-up and Kim Soo-gun. This Kim Jung-up, born in 1922 and died in 1988, was under Le Corbusier from 1952 for 4 years. He came back to Seoul in 1956, just after the Korean War, and began painting architectural languages of Le Corbusier on the barren ruins of this land. This is one of the masterpieces, French Embassy in Korea, which demonstrates that he not only duplicated architecture of Le Corbusier, but borrowed the languages to express Korean poetry. Korean architecture could have reached a new level through him, but he was exiled from Korea, indicted for his writings against dictatorship. His later architecture, after 8 years of exile, did not reach this new level. Kim Soo-gun, who fled to Tokyo in his school days to avoid Korean War, came back in 1960 as the first prize winner for competition of National Assembly Hall, though this was cancelled by military governments succeeded by coup. But the military revolutionary government needed a new face for the new era, and later Kim was supported by them, which enabled him to be in charge of major national projects. He also had Enlightenment attitude. Many young architects flocked around him to be his disciple or associate, and these architects form the mainstream of current Korean leading architects. Kim Soo-gun studied under Yoshimura Junjo, and Yoshimura in turn is related to the Anthony Raymond, who was in charge of constructing Imperial Hotel in Tokyo, which was, as you all know, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. Therefore, the organic architecture, the architectural concept of Wright could be valid in Kim's architecture. Above this foundation, closed by craftsmanship of Japanese architecture and finished by Korean aesthetics, this could be defined as the architecture of Kim Soo-gun. I have been devoted disciple of Kim Soo-gun for 15 years, entering Space Group, which he led in 1974 till his death in 1986, and managing Space Group after his death for 3 years. This is Masan Cathedral, designed in 1977, which I worked as project architect. It was through this project that I learned the relation between space organization and formal expression. This project also worked as strong motive for changes made in architecture of Kim Soo-gun compared to his previous works. This Gyeongdong Presbyterian Church in Seoul, which I designed just before my departure to Vienna, where I spent 2 years, gave me confidence that I had mastered Kim Soo-gun's architecture. The architecture of Kim Soo-gun had changed after this. This change can be described as a change of spatial organization which concerned the pursuit of metaphor through formal expression. Kim Soo-gun, not only an architect but a pioneering figure in Korean art, died too young at the age of 55. This is cultural center of Gumi, located in southern part of Korea, completed under my responsibility just after death of Kim Soo-gun. This is an urban complex named as Nuron Building in Busan, Harbor City, southern part of Korea. It was 2 years after death of Kim Soo-gun. Recently, this client asked me another project to design. Later, I'll explain again. Finally, this Byeondong Catholic Church was born. On the day of completion ceremony, I fell into serious skepticism. I became independent from space group before the completion, and I was wandering between Kim Soo-gun and myself. Perhaps this was not a trial to define architecture of Kim Soo-gun, but groping for the beginning of my architecture. Here, I had to ask the essential question: what should be architecture? I proposed three criteria: rationality, preciseness, and timeliness. Interpretation of rationality and preciseness differs depending on characteristics of architect. Elements that makes an architect consistent, regardless of varying conditions, would be creative intention originating from an attitude of being historically conscious. Timeless, in my opinion, worldview of an architect based on historical consciousness. It is his philosophy and intuition towards reality. Rationality and preciseness of Byeondong Catholic Church can be same for Kim Soo-gun and myself. But it is next to impossible for us to share same timeless. For past background is different and so is facing reality. Timeless, therefore, is the key factor in differentiating architects. What is timeless that I should pursue in my architecture? I grasp a thread through touring world and finding architecture of Adolf Ross and his timeless again. Adolf Ross. Everybody you know about him. When culture of Vienna lost its core and lost direction in the late 19th century, he paved the way for the new esprit for the new era, the 20th century. Silence in architecture. He tried to set aesthetics of space that stores life through emptiness. This, at least, is an essential theme that architecture faces. I would like to introduce a scene which I am very fond of. The stage set for Waiting for Godot by Albert Giacometti. A gaunt tree and dusk moonlight. A picture of this play that was staged at the Odeon Theatre, Paris in 1961. Although it visually executed the essence of the play of Samuel Beckett in an abstract and compressed form, it nevertheless must have been the essence of Giacometti's spirit and the tension towards his life. Sculptures of Giacometti have such a fragile, thin, and long feeble structure, but they give enormous power and suspense. Why do these skeletal, austere structures seem so beautiful to me? I experienced similar beauty in the writings of Kim Jung-hee with a pen name as Chusa in the 18th century at Joseon Dynasty. Writings and calligraphs of Chusa cannot be considered beautiful by looking at each letter. But the beauty generated by the gathering of each letter refuses to be compared to any other writing. Before Chusa, Kim Jung-hee made his own style called Chusache. His writings, one letter after another, was marvelously proportionated and voluminous in the traditional way. But his exile to Jeju Island for 8 years in his old age made him overcome his outstanding writings that had been possible under his wealth and status. And his self-consciousness that he found through an utter solitude during the exile made him write straight from his soul. This became the style what we now call Chusache. In his writings, there is an extreme intensity between the letters, dominating the space. Power spurts out from the writings as if each letter was poked by a knife. Emptiness is an aesthetics that has been continuing in the Orient and is the foundation of the Oriental spirit. But even in the paintings of Western world, after Cézanne, the aesthetics of emptiness has been penetrating the canvas that has previously been full of colors? Why do we consider them beautiful? Aesthetics of ideology, someone has once called it. That seems quite appropriate, for this beauty emanated from the spirit, truth of his will. This spirit is silence against the void. This is austerity and is a genuine language. To the Mexican architect Luis Barragan, the walls he erected were nostalgia. The space framed by these walls was silence. He once said, "Man finds himself only in close relation with solitude. Solitude is a good companion, and my architecture is not suitable for those who are afraid of solitude or to those who avoid solitude." He was born in a Welsh family and well educated. But what was it that made his solitude so deep that he kept silent about it to his death? And what relation did his silence have with the blazing sun and the wildness of Mexico? We can say, at least, that he does not just stroll about the fringe of architecture. It is the probe into the essence, the firm belief about core. We all can see that this core does not surface above the horizon so easily. These phenomena could be attributed to just part of another minimalistic act, but the limited drone of minimalistic clothes itself to its own genre, whereas a high condensation of spiritual world cannot be entrapped within this limited scope. I find an example of this transcendence in a work of minimalistic art by the Korean artist Suha Kim Hwang-gi. Right one is painted by Kim Hwang-gi, where all the poise is spread across the painting, overcoming the limitation of the mechanical drone. Mondrian's Boogie Woogie is just different from Suha's Where Will We Meet as what? At the same New York's nightlife registered differently to the two artists, even though they lived the same alliance life there. There is a critical pitch in Mondrian's drone, whereas I feel Suha has expanded the limit to eternal horizon, like this country's spot on his painting. It is in his picture where I find the possible exit, an escape from the limit and the labyrinth the contemporary architecture hit upon. Let me call this beauty of poverty or beauty of aesthetics. I find the possibility in the living style of low-income housings with the name of Daldongnae, meaning moon village, that are built by themselves on hillside in Seoul. Basically, there does not exist separate space for individuals. Their possession is to the minimum, and sometimes even the minimum portion is used publicly. Alley and architecture is related intimately, and alley is often used for activities like playground or social gathering. The shapes of their housing is very shabby and made of cheap materials which are far away from showing off, but shape of their lives are truthfully depicted. Here, to use is more important than to have, to share than to add, to empty than to fill. They don't have much money, but they do not live poorly. At least they have sky near them, which makes them sensitive to seasons change. Moon casts light on them first, Moon Village. I received so much architectural learnings from there. From now on, I'll show you some of my recent practical works and projects. This two-story house with 200 square meter total floor area and 230 of land is situated in Gangnam district that was newly developed in the 70s. 수졸당 means shabby residence, which the client named to show his attitude toward life. The client is also art critic in Korea and had been sent to prison for anti-movement against dictatorship. He wanted me to build a house with a split. The style of our traditional housing, shown in right slide, has been courtyard type with madang in each center. Please remember the word of madang is Korean word. Madang means courtyard, but which is rather different from that of Western house. There is no grass, no trees, nothing but emptiness. But ever since the economic storm that swept Korea in the 60s, from a artist's desire to dream a new life away from poor lives of the past, traditional housing has been described as a symbol of poverty, and false and greedy developers made it a fact that Western houses stood for the new era. A type called French mini two-story house, which never existed in France, has been a trend, and this is the typical style existed on the site. Here, a peculiar house that might be suitable for a foreign movie sits in the site, a lawn in front with trees like a prairie, and a tall fence is built around to protect. Consequently, the district is not a place to live together, rather a dry place where one house is only next to one another. There exists no neighbors within such system. With apartments like hand court that has been increasing in our land, such system of housing that only pursues convenience and function might destroy the very core of our lives. The architectural concept here was to build layers of space and to connect them by an axis. The more of these spatial layers, the more various our life experience would be. This conceptual sketch shows 8 layers. This is array is first layer. This space is second layer. This clay madang is for third, and stone fence, and wooden madang, and passage, and rear madang, and white wall. Is 8 layers. Each layer bears its meaning, and these are connected to be the background for the life within. Also here, 3 important outdoor space exist. This is the clay madang in the front, and wooden deck madang in the middle, and stone madang at the rear. This engulfs the indoor space. Interior and exterior are intertwined, and finally controls the flow of space affecting each other. Through the repetition of the brightness, darkness, brightness, darkness, brightness, darkness, and so on, you can see the variations of layerings. This slide shows the the layers on one axis. This part is clay madang and the stone wall and wooden madang and transparent tube and the stone madang and white wall at the rear. This view, which looks outward to the wooden madang from living room, is a vital scene. The persimmon tree that stands in the middle of wooden madang is a clear indicator of four seasons. I accept white background wall will embrace the sunlight rays and shadows, leading people to the world of meditation. Next is a housing project. A sad new record is set in the suburb Bundang, located in the southern part of Seoul, where a new town of 400,000 residents was built within only 4 years. Maybe this is the fastest built city in the world in my knowledge. To celebrate and commemorate this, and as a propaganda, government invited 20 architects to design a housing complex of 8 to 10 units and a single house each. Unlucky or unlucky, I don't know, but I was also invited, and I designed this housing complex with a theme to live together, which is an expansion of Sujol-Tang concept, which you have seen just before. Outdoor space forms spatial sequence which starts from madang for 8 units, and then to the madang for 4 units, and next to public space for 2 units, and finally madang for each unit. Residents living here have to go through the sequence, and through the process, I think consciousness of community can be formed. This is a small urban complex building in the east of Seoul that stores a residence and rental clinic and rental space. As you can see, the building besides the street are all closed when the working hour is over. No interaction is made between city and architecture. Only the line of possession and the rigid wall exists. This is the site for this project. Here I believed in the architecture within city and city within architecture, and try to expand city into architecture. The open stairway is thought to be inclined street, and climbing this stairway up and down, community within architecture could be generated. In my belief, architecture is open to the city, and the city penetrates the architecture. This small hospital of OBGYN and women's health is situated in Gangnam of Seoul, a newly developed area. Site is between 40-meter wide road and 6-meter service road. Here I also tried to make way to connect these two roads for the architecture to have a small fabric system of urban. Therefore, this corridor is thought as the main street. Core on the left is treated like infrastructure of city, and to the right are living spaces. and in the middle, outdoor living space like park in the city is composed. I prepared 240 slides, but allowance time for me, I was told only 1 hour, so I have to execute so speedily. A building for an advertisement agency called as Well Communications, renowned for its challenging adverts in Korea, was designed as expansion of the experience I had in the previous two works. This site is seen directly from Namsan Mountain, just in the middle of Seoul. If we could achieve height, nice view can be acquired. This is the site. Site is sloped and is beside 25 wide road with fast traffic. Here, first, a project for this small city is confirmed, and underneath parking space as the station for arriving at city is composed. This project crosses with the inner main street within the building, connecting living spaces and working spaces, also two small plazas and pocket parks in between. Vertically, this project is built upon each other as the central function of working spaces, and the docks and shops are for vertical infrastructure for this city. This diagram is the composition of streets and distribution map of plazas in this city. Amenity space for relax is also arranged wherever needed. This is project for this city, and this cross the main street and among the working spaces and living spaces. It will be completed early next year. It has been 200 years since Catholic Church has been spread here in our land, and Catholic Church became an important part of our urban scene. But including the ones recently built, majority of them is in red bricks and has Gothic steeple, which is even considered as the symbol for Catholic Church. Only clinging to the exterior of the Gothic, not understanding the spirit, ironically does not concord with the universality the word Catholic means. Perhaps this stuffed animal-like Gothic form may be in the way for accepting the demand that present society accept from religious buildings. This stereotype seen might overturn essential spirit and values. Church, which sometimes is seen just hanging up high above, is in danger of being recognized as something that is far from our reality. This is an important task that architecture of Catholic Church of Korea should overcome. Father of Byungdong Catholic Church, which you saw previously, moved to a suburb church, and he asked me to design a small church in the rural area. This kind of church, which has no resident priest, is usually 100 square meter floor area, but this church was 400, rather bigger than usual one. From 10 meter wide road, 600 meter long small lane along paddy field, there is a small hill full of chestnut trees. This hill is called as Dolmaru, and foot of this hill is where the church will sit. I sat there a long time and thought about the meaning of religious space. I reminded religious character in the line and tracks British artist Richard Long made in an archaic field. And I imagined the religious restriction and freedom old Aztec had walking around this causeway of the dead in Teotihuacan, made in 7th century, located in northeastern of city of Mexico. Or at the path leading to the ceremony space of Korea, or on the way to the sacred place where Buddha writings are kept, I could be very anxious for the encounter of religious space. I find the indication of religious space in the passage to the sacred rather than sacredity itself. Not only religious space, but indication of unusual space evokes us from usual one and leads us to eternity. I took keen interest in interpreting these into architecture. If church is to be erected here, it would create a scene of gathering where people would come by walking on a tractor, bicycles, truck, or even cow every Sunday. Already their heart would be filled with religious consolation, and they would be beautiful from glow inside. I felt the need to express this scene into architecture and decided to build a wall that stores the procession of people. This 57-meter long wall would also store the scene of paddy field that is different every season and also frames the religious territory. The approach route is 1.8 meter above ground would make several experiences. Crossing Madang, that is for outside mass gathering, and outside chapel with lawns, slope, and walls which frame them. People would find unexpected approach to the church on the right, finding themselves heading toward it. Once inside, people but instinct right column would stand behind the altar. Sitting quietly, left wall will be worshipped from right above. Openings on the lower left would be filled with chestnut trees, and this sacred space will be expanded into the surrounding nature. Humble materials used here, like concrete and block, would enlighten the ceremony and the space that holds it. Once the miracle of calling and the blessing of answering is killed, people out from this sacred space will meet nature again and will thank the one who gave nature the beauty. And they would come down the ramp in peace and freedom. This another church situated in the midst of new residential district of Pungnap-dong, east of Seoul. On the south, 17-floor high apartments threaten for sight, and on the north, 3-floor high housing complexes are lined up, and 4-story small urban buildings are on each other side. Therefore, during the program defining stage, this land is considered to have community center characteristics. But as I said, the surrounding scenes, like any other place newly developed in Seoul, had unbalanced skyline, and the composition of street pattern were also conceived only following logics of capital, resulting in unfavorable environment. I again confirmed the meaninglessness of Gothic steeple, and the site needed a device to straighten out the chaos around it. The device should also satisfy the rationality to acquire the solemn space. To confront the 50-meter high gigantic apartment, 60-meter high and 60-meter long wall is set to create tension outside and to divide solemn space inside. To reduce the huge cell for the pedestrians, some form of mesh is attached. A large opening is caved in to connect the outside to inside. Once through this opening, one arrives at Madang full of sunlight, named Madang of Blessing. This Madang is the central space where all the divisionism of functions are arranged. This Madang of Blessing has a white wall in front as the focal point, which at the same time frames the Madang. To reach the main chapel, people has to climb a long ramp along the priest residence. This climbing and approaching scene can be noticed from outside, and activities on the deck before and after ceremony would strengthen the difference of reverence and would confirm religious space again. As if to prove it, the cross in the wall would cast its long shadow upon them. Reversed. It has undergone engineering design for a year, and it is to be completed early next year also. This project was from an invited competition 2 years ago. I was surprised to win the competition. It was a rare incident that Korean Catholic authorities chose this kind scheme without any Gothic tower, and I participated in the competition just to make a record of my belief, but they accepted. This is a very special project also for Korean architects. The official name of this project is 금강경 독성의 경주율동법당, meaning Yultong Monastery for the study group of Buddhist diamond script in Gyeongju, and the function could be understood as monastery of Buddhism. As a Western monastery, the function of this monastery can be largely divided into ritual space and individual meditation spaces and supporting facilities. The building that people of this group sought was supporting facility like dining room and office on the first floor, individual meditation spaces on the second floor, and a temple on the third floor, then traditional style roof to cover this, which would grandiose the whole structure. This kind of type shown in the slide is usual in the programs of temples that are built around modern Korea. Walls are usually covered with various colors, patterns, and symbols. At last, they would look like a house of shamanism, not based on orthodox. I explained earnestly these arbitrary circumstances with various examples, and so many times discussed a lot of possibilities that a spiritual architecture should possess. Finally, they seem to be agreed fully, and on this basis, the scheme was sought out. I'll show you an old Buddhist monastery, 5 years old, that I enjoyed very much to visit, Yeongseonam at Andong in southern part of Korea. What I feel here is that there's no building. Here exists only emptiness, only traces of meditation. Enjoy the slides, please. Site of this particular project is on the foot of mountain of Yultong in Gyeongju, the capital city of Silla dynasty in 7th century. From the road north, one would have to come down 1 kilometer to south to reach the site. This is the site. East, south, and west sides are surrounded by mountains, which makes the lighting conditions poor, but nevertheless a comforting feeling exists. I noticed the name of mountain on the west side, Byeokdo Mountain. It is said that this mountain has been a hiding place for Buddhist monks or shamans for a long time, and there still exist traces of it. In the morning, bright light would cast from Byeokdo Mountain axis first, which will be important for the allocation of the building where the meditators live in. The central space of this building for meditation is the empty madang in the center. This madang is 15 meters wide and is framed by 60 meter long walls on both sides. Surface of this madang is gently tilted and sloped 1 to 18. And through this gap between the two walls, views are concentrated to Byeokdo Mountain and sky above it. This madang could be used as mass gathering space, but mostly it would be empty. People to the temple would climb this madang. Sounds from water stream and shadows from two walls would create a passage to Byeokdo Mountain, ever changing the view. Sitting on the wooden madang of eastern wing above office, here, the passage would be clear to the meditator, which is directed straight to Byeokdo Mountain. Or if one sits at the highest end of the tilted madang, another world would grasp him. Southern meditation rooms, each 1.8 meter wide, is divided according to the array that is depended upon the wall that frames the madang. View of these small rooms are concentrated to one side, and this is closed by another solid wall. These rooms are closed from outside, and the light thread from small openings would be the only connection to the outside. Temple is on the northern part Roof is open to the north approach, and the light emitting through this gap would lead people who would come at night. Climbing the sloped madang and reaching the praying place, this would be the entrance plaza for temple. Columns that stand on the opening of wall that frames the madang would lead them into temple. Light from the inclined concrete roof would enlighten the interior that has no color, no ornaments, no forms, only silence. Under the sloped madang, dining room is there. This room would be open to ponds near this site, which would comfort the meditators, relaxing them. Water streams, ponds, and small stairways would be consolations from all this kind of tension. The client for whom I worked with the Nuron building when I was space group gave me an opportunity to design an urban complex building with his main headquarters office in Seoul. This is the first building which typical floors after my own practice. On a site of 6,000 square meters, the company of 60 years in food industry, its storehouse and old headquarters, which are 40 years old, existed. Worn out red bricks testifying the years. The client wanted two separate buildings, which is to be built in two phases. Considering the view to Han River just near the site and the sun, ventilation, I set the building vertical to the adjacent road, also setting the building in zigzag form to acquire wider view. It was vital to tilt the plaza in between so the plaza would be away to the sky, because these two adjacent roads has to have different functions. Due to this tilting, the illegal shabby buildings behind would not be seen, also making the access to the underground from behind easier and making it convenient to reach the underground community facilities like shopping stores. The other building, which will be built in second phase, will be connected to the Ryzen Plaza. On the plaza, there would be trees, water streams, amenity space, which could be used by not only residents and workers, but to act as a small park for surrounding area. This building, remembering the trace of red brick house that once stood here, will be built in red bricks by hand. In Korean society, which is headed for high technology, erecting a 20-story high building in brick with hands should have a meaningful message. The client likes to enjoy this meaning. 19 units of residence is installed on the 5 upper floors. The building is under the setback architectural laws, but this setback could give terraces to each unit. Also, this setback line marks the identity of this building. Reminding the cluster of Moon Village, this architecture would make a tower of brick, which will act as a landmark for some time in this district with apartments like hand court, old factories, and bumper-to-bumper vehicles. This is the last project to show you tonight. This was a scheme for the International Competition of National Museum of Korea authorized by UIA held last year. 341 schemes from over 40 countries was proposed. My scheme was selected as one of top 10. This scheme was in association with Min Hyun-sik, who started here 7 years ago. We saw the competition site as a small city within the city of Seoul. This scheme consists of various elements such as streets, plazas, buildings, forests, mountains, valleys, streams, which traditional towns in Korea used to have. The idea was to give urban landscape within the metropolis to generate direct and indirect communication between people, rather than to make monumental gesture or create symbolic building. Our scheme reflects the geometry of Seoul to speak itself. This scheme is divided into 3 sections. In the central zone on the tilted plaza, it accommodates the common facilities for visitors and staffs. The east zone is occupied by the exhibition galleries, which the west zone by the staffs, facilities, and collective storage. We propose the place of emptiness that provides voice in Seoul's original geometry. The place of emptiness constitutes of 3 parts: a tilted plaza, and a step-down cascade, and the media carrier wall. It is divided into 2 parts diagonally by mountain Namsan and Gwanaksan axis, each eventually forming a acute triangular shape. To tilt one part of place from the bottom to north end of the site to the height 18 meters. It leads upward to the Bukhan mountain and to the sky in the space of strong perspective effect. It is like a sailing from real world to the ancient era, because we understand the museum, especially in case of the National Museum of Korea, is a kind of time machine traveling through past time. The slope proposed is so gentle and it scarcely shows in the floating mat on the water. It is similar to sloped roads between mountains with stepped paddy fields. To step down and make a water cascade from a north end to the bottom of the site. It is similar to gentle stream in the valleys along the road. It leads downwards to the Han River and soaks its way into the earth. To erect a wall on the east side of the place, it generates dynamic tension. In a specific moment, the sun hits the walls. People can appreciate the specific feeling as if to say the sun never knew how great it is until it struck the side of the wall. From the bottom of tilted plaza, people start sailing. Walking up gentle slope, people can reach the main plaza. This plaza has a very specific space quality, having perspective effect to the north and reverse perspective effect to the south. In this spatially distorted space, we expect people to forget the real world. The exhibition wing is sliced to 5 building blocks and outdoor spaces like fingers to communicate with nature. The volume of each block is slightly higher and longer from bottom to the north end. It represents stepped paddy field in the side of mountains. All of this become an integrated landscape that contains city and rural elements and reflect the geometry of city of Seoul. But it ended as a dream of us. Thank you very much for your listening.
Who would like to ask a question?
No question. Very much. Thank you very much.
Do you want a question? Let's
No.
have a go.
No question is better.
No question?
No question is better for me.